Captain on the bridge.
Alright, Captains, we are back on the bridge, and today I wanted to go over Strange New Worlds, Episode 4, Memento Mori. Captains, I was really looking forward to this, and the reason being is I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Silver Metal Tavern because we have gotten to speak with him on numerous occasions, and we've even shouted him out here already on the previous videos we've done here on the YouTube bridge. But he is one of the photo editors, if I'm not mistaken, of Strange New Worlds. And we've received raids from him on the Twitch bridge, and it's been awesome. And he really told me that he was excited for us to be able to watch this episode because he was involved in it. So, oh, and let me tell you, Caps, it was whew. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. I've taken some screenshots. I want to just go over some of the things that I felt that we can review, sort of react to in terms of this, because in our previous videos that we've done, we've just been enjoying the time that we've been doing these when it comes to making the thumbnails, when it comes to taking the screenshots, and of course, most importantly, just watching these episodes. I will say, Captains, that this has just taken me to a place that I never thought I would be this late in my sort of time as a Star Trek fan. And that's just taken me back to when I was a kid watching Star Trek The Next Generation. It's that feeling of just wonder, just excitement. And from beginning to end, let me tell you, Captains, I was engaged 100%. And really, for me, that's what it's about. It's very sort of cosmetic in terms of I see something and I like it. That's enough for me. I don't want to try to think about it as much. If I feel that I'm leaning towards it, I'm feeling positive about it, that's where I want to be, in all honesty, Captain. So, here we go. On screen. So, again, we're just going to go over these screenshots, give a little bit of sort of my thoughts as we go along so that we can see how I feel about this. Now, episode starts off with La'an giving a personal log, and it's about Starfleet Remembrance Day. And I don't remember having that before, but it's a thing. Kind of starts off with a shot of the Enterprise here. Beautiful shot of the after. Yes, totally love the Disco Prize. I do have again some of the issues that I have with it are so minor. It's not necessarily even negative. It's just something that I noticed. Just like from the previous episodes that we covered when we saw the Enterprise fire phaser photon. But beautiful shot of it, and then the camera pans over the Enterprise. Here, this turns into the pin, and it says SS Puget Sound, Starship Puget Sound, United Federation of Planets. So this is something that La'an is looking at in her quarters. Again, I'm loving how big these quarters are, and she's given her personal log talking about the Remembrance Day, and of course, it's kind of going over this as well. Captain Pike is now also giving his sort of speech there in regards to remembering all those that were lost, and this kind of all ties in. Here we see the transporter operator Kyle going to come into play again later. Again, all this is just kind of spanning shots here, greeting one of his fellow officers. You can see they're wearing their pins here, remembering those that they've lost in their previous ships that they've served. It felt really good. And then it goes to Pike, and of course, just it's so genuine when I'm listening to him. It's so genuine. It's so very real and true, and it comes to across the screen, and I can feel that. And that's why I always say that he sets the tone. So right now, what their mission is essentially is to go send over some supplies to a colony so that they can make the air breathable. And here's one of the dynamics of this episode. There's a lot of things that happen here and these episodic type episodes because it starts and it ends period point blank. That's it. There's no overarching story other than a couple pieces here that are like, of course, Pike's worry about the future, which I'm very surprised it actually didn't come into account here. And I kind of appreciate that because I had mentioned before in some of the reviews, it was like almost every scene there was Pike was remembering, and it was. I'm not saying it was a bit much. I'm just saying, but I appreciate it wasn't here. Now, in this episode here, we have relationship between showing between the crew members, and I love it. I keep saying it. This feels like a crew. Strange New Worlds. This crew on the Enterprise, they feel like a family, and I feel that. And we get a little bit more background, of course. You have Hemmer, Uhura, talking about some technobabble. And what I'm just getting from this is sort of the conversation between them, and I love it. There's Hammer is very judgmental and very he's sort of not talking down to Uhura, but addresses her as cadet. And at the end of this conversation, she says, challenge accepted, and that's sort of to prove to Hammer herself. But again, Hammer, I love Hammer in terms of how he acts. It's his screen presence. It's there. It's very weighted when he's on screen, and it's just very filled with his presence when he's on screen. If that's a word. Of course, Uhura is still coming across like she is really kind of just finding her way through this, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit later when we get to certain scenes here. But when it comes to Uhura, she's got the sass, she's got the smile, and I love her moments that we get with Uhura because she gets to almost interact with a lot of the crew in a very innocent way. But it goes to, of course, La'an going to the bridge here, and of course Una going to her saying, "Hey, where's your pin, girl?" And she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to wear it." And it was literally just shut down like that. And Una knows not to really push her. She just doesn't want to feel it. And of course, we'll find out more as we go along. But again, I'm loving the interaction between Una and La'an, that relationship there now. The thing that got me again in this episode was this was very La'an centric. And I had mentioned in the previous sort of reviews that we've done that it's been up and down for me with La'an, but this one it felt spot on. I don't not like La'an. I like La'an. What I didn't really appreciate sometimes was just how overpowering and how rude she would come across. Not rude, but very just strict coming across. I understand she's the security officer and everything like that. Of course, she's like that. She has that backstory of the lone survivor, and this is where we get to find out a little bit more. And wow, whew, man, I was not prepared. There were so many moments in this episode that was not prepared, and again, I said it earlier. I was just super engaged from beginning to end, and it's like every scene, I'm just glued to my seat. I find myself leaning forward. Is it just me, Caps? Are you leaning forward? I want to know what's happening. I want to be here, and I just feel so immersed in what I'm watching that I kind of forget all the stuff previous and just am in the moment of watching this episode. But again, I appreciate this a lot. So they arrive at the planet, scanning here again. This this bridge, this view screen. I'm gonna be very interested to see how they're gonna explain this away when they're gonna make this sort of just a box of a view screen when they get back to the TOS era. Now, if they retcon it, if they've said they've retconned it, at this point, captains, I don't care. It's just I would have just appreciated it more if they said this is just a reimagining. You know what? We're not retconning anything, but we are going to take advantage of the technology that we have now. Take, of course, hints from history from the TOS and sort of just make it this. And I'm okay with this. I'm not to say that I'm going to not say anything about it with the reviews that we overdue, but or so this is what I was saying. I keep forgetting that Uhura is not the communications officer. So it, I've never heard her name yet, but I think she does a good job as a communications officer. I think it's the second show that I've seen her in, maybe third, uh, and she's doing a fine job. And I want to see. I wonder if is there going to be a transition, like an episode that's going to be focused on the transition between this communication officers and then when Uhura takes over. Very, and the reason why I want to take this as well, when you look at their sort of station here, I like how there's these buttons. There's actual buttons, not just these touch screens. So again, they're trying to mix some old and new, obviously more new than old, but you have these buttons here, and again, I appreciate it. They're trying their best to harken back, but it's not too forward. It's still, when you think about it, this is still the future of our time right now, right? And let me say this, Captain, this is just a show, okay? So let's just sort of, I don't want to get too caught up in, of course, canon and what we've seen already previous. The technology is what it's going to be and translate it onto screen because that's what we have access to. The original series, that's what they had access to. That's why it looked the way it looked. I understand it's gonna look very futuristic, but I think they're doing a good job here. If anything, I would have just loved them to just sort of shrink everything down, shrink the bridges, shrink the hallways, just to get a little closer. But again, just a little nitpick from Triz here. See there again, I took this screenshot because I wanted to sort of emphasize these little buttons that they press here, which really do look like the buttons that they had in the original series. And I love it. So they scan the planet, they don't find anything here. Spock, again, I'm having a hard time connecting with Spock. He's just so. I will say this thing. He is very consistent in the way they act. He does have a little bit of moments here and there, and I do like those. It's just I have a hard time sort of connecting with Spock. And it's like whenever he's talking, like he looks looks constipated. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that, Caps, but again, that's just how I feel. But nothing really negative. It's just like I said this before. He's got huge, huge shoes to fill. But for what he has done so far in Strange New Worlds, he is being that logical Vulcan. And there's a moment here that I do appreciate from Spock. So again, they're ordered to go to the planet by Pike. Una asks La'an to join her with an away team. They get down to the planet. I took this screenshot because just to kind of look at the effects that they're using. Obviously not the same, but they're trying to get it close. So they get to the planet here. Now I will say they made this very sort of very obviously dark. Good job, Trish. But the mood, you can feel it. And the reason why these two smiling, I didn't take the shot, but it was just a tense moment of them kind of walking through, assessing the where they landed here. It felt like almost a Resident Evil moment, like he was going towards a window, dog barked at him, and they're just like laughing at him, going, haha. But there you go, they're all very, check out the planet. Of course, La'an sees this. It's just a bloodbath. Like there's no bodies whatsoever. And this was kind of uneasy. This scene just felt very this whole sequence here felt very unnerving. Like something was gonna happen other than the dog barking and jumping towards the glass. This I love this sort of scenes because it really made me feel uneasy. And that speaks to how engaged I am and how much I'm enjoying these episodes from Strange New Worlds. But this was pretty graphic here. This whole blood, of course, they situation now. Back to the bridge, there is a ship that they see. It's the cargo ship, and this is like a Federation cargo ship of some sort, I believe, and it's another ship, a new ship. I wonder if we're gonna. Now, I do love how with the view screen that there's like an in-screen, there's another additional screen here that they're showing sort of magnified. I love that. We never really necessarily saw that. The next generation, I believe Voyager DS9, it was more just kind of close. The view of the whole view screen would just close up to the target and not kind of put a picture in picture, if that makes sense. But they're being hailed, and there's another shot there of the ship there in the display there, which just shows you more of the configuration. There's the cargo, warp nacelles, main hull there. Then open the hailing frequencies. They're about to go, but then again, hailed there. It's the colony. They're telling them kind of what happened there, and you feel the sense of just, oh, thank goodness, Starfleet, you're here, help us out. And of course, Pike's like, yep, no, we're gonna get you out, transport, but they cannot. And when I was looking at Pike's kind of interaction here, he was very sort of distant. And anyways, they couldn't transport them. So what they did was they put this bridge here to attach the actual ship so that they can move across. Now we've seen this before, or I've seen this before in Discovery, when I believe personnel was kind of transferring back and forth between Discovery and Enterprise. I believe that was end of season 2. So I believe this is the only second time we've seen this on screen. Sure, whatever. It is what it is. But again, it kind of shows you the scale of how big this ship compared is to the Enterprise. Of course, the Enterprise being a lot bigger than the original series, but again, just a good shot. And I do appreciate always that they're showing these sort of space shots, and it looks good. I really have to say that it looks. I don't say it looks real, but there are certain angles, cameras, but that is so far from the ship that it makes the scaling of the situation feel more authentic. And we'll speak to that a little bit later. But like your normal cells there. Now, next scene here, you see them kind of walking off, all the survivors colony to sick bay. And this one, I took a picture. I took this screenshot, and of course, La'an Una talking to Honestly that that Pike was talking to. This screenshot here reminded me of an airport terminal when I was young. I don't know, that I was just taken back. I just remembered that when I was growing up. That's what it just reminded me of. And that, what else could it look like though, really, other than a very just like a hallway that can fold up with some lights, really. You know, Una, of course, Lana talking about the situation here. Now, this is where it sort of gets more into what's happening to Laan. So there's a child who's screaming monster, and she starts explaining what she saw, what she heard. And this was kind of eerie. This was really eerie. And when Laan asked the child, okay, well, what did it sound like? She started making these clicking noises, and something snapped in Laan's memory, right? And she, of course, tells the bridge something's going on. Check out for certain types of readings, and Spock finds that there's like this holographic sort of reading there behind the planet there, and she tells, of course, that this is not the best screenshot of La'an. I'm so sorry. I love you, I really do. Not the best screenshot, but she tells the bridge to go red alert, and of course they try to. Guess what? That little walkway is attached. They cannot, and Pike is like, oh crap. And of course, La'an actually looks out of the window and sees the ship. Now, this is I didn't I don't know what it is about the ships here on Discovery and Strange New Worlds where they're moving a lot. Now, the way that this Gorn ship moves is very weird. It doesn't have a straight flight pattern. It kind of goes left to right, up and down, and spins. I don't know why. I don't really like it. It reminds me of those little fighters that the Enterprise had in Discovery Season 2 when it was going to fight with Section 31. I'm like, you don't need to keep moving up and down. You're in space. You don't need to, right? I don't understand that. I don't get it. I don't like it. It's a nitpick, definitely. But the ship comes across, starts attacking. And this is what I mean when saying the scale. It just shows you the ship from a very far angle, and it kind of makes you feel the situation of how grim it is because you're out here alone. It's kind of the word. It's just you're out here alone in space, and you're in just this little casing of a ship, and you're just out there. And I appreciate that. It just gives a sense of scale, and that's the mood for scenes. And of course, the ship starts attacking. Hits. This is a scene that we saw from the trailers and one that we covered, and now we know it was that cargo ship attached to bridge here. Again, they tried to put the shields up, of course they couldn't, so that gets hit. All that, I keep getting so lost. All that was 10 minutes right before the credits. It's just I'm so involved that I forget that we haven't even seen the credits yet, or I haven't seen the credits yet. And of course, I get stuck just watching it because I do love. This is one of my favorite Star Trek intros. I'm not sure where I'm gonna place this of all the intros that I've seen. We may do some sort of video on, my top five, top 10 of Star Trek intros, whether it be TVs, movies. But this is really up there, and this actually has something that in this intro is what we're going to see here in this episode. But yeah, I love this intro. So then it goes to the scene where we're seeing this boy here just smiling, and it's La'an. La'an has been knocked out because the ship hacked, literally decimated that cargo ship, decimating the bridge, which La'an was there. Una did try to pull her out, but of course it was kind of too late there. Here, Nurse Chapel is kind of tending to her, kind of the blurred vision going on here. That's what she was seeing. And La'an tries to apologize to Una. She's like, I'm so sorry I froze up. He's like, it's okay, get to the bridge. She's hurt. Una here is hurt. And let me just say, I've said this before, I love, number one, I love Una. And man, I love how she sort of has also this presence in all the scenes that she's in. It's just that they have such very good sort of crew dynamics. And of course, this being one of them, Una and La'an, and I quite enjoy how Rebecca is really portraying Una. This very strong-willed woman. Of course, we found out in the last episode he was a Ilarian, and one has to be like top there so far of the 4 episodes. That last episode, and again, at the end here, we'll give a ranking. Of course, they're being hit here. They're doing the whole little shake the camera move. Again, I appreciate the screens all blinking out when hitting, of course, sparks. You know what we haven't seen here, though, captains? We haven't seen foam blocks fly across the screen. I've missed it. I've seen sparks. I've seen wires hang down. I've seen steam coming down, but I haven't seen blocks yet. I could be wrong, but maybe before TNG, US, these things weren't. They built the ships differently back then. But they're being attacked there. And of course, goes back to Hemmer. Hemmer and Una are in the cargo bay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this cargo bay is opened. And I'm not quite 100% sure where this cargo bay is. If this is the main shuttle bay or if this was just like a different cargo bay. I think it's a cargo bay, not the shuttle bay. If I'm not mistaken. I believe this was the unit that we're going to deliver. Of course, they get blown out. They get hit, actually, and Spock actually says that shuttle bay is hit. And here again, just kind of the scenes jump in back and forth, and again, I love it because it sets the tone going back and forth between what's happening here, and it's a lot. And of course, La'an gets to the bridge, and she tells Pike it's the Gorn, like 100% the Gorn. And I'll speak more to the Gorn at the end here, and it's such a huge threat for them, and it's weird because we've all know that Kirk has already fought in the Gorn. To me, when I saw it, it just looked like a joke because of the time. It was literally someone in a suit, in a costume, and it was a joke. But I appreciate how they're making the groin here sort of really this big threat to them, which it kind of makes sense beforehand. They haven't really, they're saying something throughout the episode that they haven't ventured this far into space, but now Milan even mentions that they've expanded their hunting grounds. But she is saying to Captain Pike that it is the Gorn, and of course, she sees again this gentleman here in the bridge, so we can tell this is messing with Laan, and this is where the backstory is coming out here, and we're gonna find out more. And again, the acting from Laan here, I love it, and it becomes again another sort of Laan Pike, Laan Una, and then later we'll speak again to the other interaction that she's gonna have. But of course, she's just sort of just seeing things, right? Flashes here and there. Of course, just conversation here of what can we do in the situation, and they are going to fly into this red dwarf that is essentially near a black hole. And this was hilarious because yeah, okay, we're gonna go in a black hole, and Pike has these Pikeisms I've said before, where he's setting the tone, setting the mood. He's like, he's not pissed, but he's like, really, he gives these very sort of facial expressions that again set the tone for me, and I quite enjoy it. I'm not sure where I'm gonna rank Pike. For sure, Picard's first, but Pike has to be. Oof, he's pushing second really quick, captains. So, anyways, they go into this dwarf, of course, and they're being pursued by the Gorn. Again, I appreciate the shots. It, again, gives a sense of scaling, and just they're alone out here, and we see now some firing from the Gorn. Looks like red phaser bolts, kind of almost look like the same type of firing visual that the other ship had there in the Comet episode there. And there's the Gorn there. What I was saying before there at the beginning of this was, as I do love the Disco Prize, I really do. This deflector was not one of my favorite things on the original series, the original Connie. And I love how they stayed true to it, but when you're in, there's just no dynamic when they're taking shots like these. But I love again these chip shots. They're getting shot again, and I didn't get one of the shots here of the Gorn actually connecting their shots to the Enterprise, but it was still that conforming shield there. And there it is again, just a shot there of them going into the actual red dwarf. Go back to Hammer and Una. In this scene here, Hammer had that unit actually on his hand. Una was knocked. Sorry, Uhura, I should say. Uhura was knocked out. She got up, helped him, literally used her lower body strength to get that off of Hammer, and he was hurt. Like his hands was hurt. Not, and he tries to, of course. There's also another situation happening where the temperature's rising, and he has to sort of get that under control. Of course, he can't, and he's going to have to now rely on Uhura helping him do that. There you go, the AP coolant system offline, which are these rods here, I guess, also part of this unit. And I did all these Tecmo stuff. I love it. I don't really understand it, obviously, but I love the Tecmo here. You can tell that these actors have really practiced their lines because they're very confident when they're talking about it, and I really do appreciate that. So this is sort of one thing where, and maybe this is one, because I'm sort of reviewing, take notes. So they're flying into Red Dwarf. Did they just stop? Like, or just set course? And of course, the senior crew go into the briefing room. Sure. So they're in the briefing room here. You got Pike, you got Spock, you got Ortegas, you got Lon. I love we saw a little bit more Ortegas in this. I loved how she is just sort of adding another layer of sometimes sort of the comedic responses that she has, and I quite enjoy it. She says one of the lines are from the trailers that uh, we covered, but they're getting an update. Hemmer and Uhura is telling them what's happening there. They're going to try to get that situation under control, but because they've flown into this red dwarf, Mbenga is letting them know, hey, the system's offline. Now, the last episode that we had reviewed there, oof, that was such a good one. And happens I have essentially a daughter, and it just really made me connect to Mbenga and Mbenga. I love all the characters, but there's a connection that I have now found with Mbenga. Now, when he said that, I thought there was going to be some sort of at least short scene where he's worried about, of course, his daughter because his daughter is in the pattern buffers, right? So transporter buffers. But I guess it's still enough that it's fine. But he never mentioned it. There was never this sort of even if it was just him looking at the unit, sort of just making sure it was fine or turn on a backup system or something like that. Now, I in the last episode, Una did say that it's going to have a direct energy feed from like its own power source, so maybe he wasn't too worried about. But yeah, systems was also going down there. They're running out of supplies. This was a tense moment, and of course they keep talking here, and Una makes it to med sick bay, and she's hurt bad. She is hurt bad, and they have to help her out, and they're gonna have to sort of stitch everyone up here. And I again, Nurse Chapel. I love Nurse Chapel. I really do. She is a character that is surprising me that I didn't think she was gonna get a lot of lines or scenes, but she's getting her fair amount. All of them really are, and I really do appreciate that. And it just makes me connect to them, to the whole crew, and I feel that again the dynamic between them. And this, of course, this is gonna be go to one of my favorite moments of this episode. But of course, they're back to the briefing room. They're talking here. Of course, the temperature is rising because of the situation there happening with the cargo bay with Hemmer. But essentially, they're just talking a plan there. La'an again talking about the Gorn. Now, Pike gives one of those captain speeches, say, hey, be creative. Let's get, whenever he does these things, man, I just get the feels. If I were going to sign up to Starfleet and I had a choice of captains, man, it would be really hard. It'd be really hard. If I had a choice, okay, I'll make it easier myself. If I had a choice between Captain Georgiou, Kirk, and Pike, I think captains where I'm gonna go. Okay, I love Georgiou. Okay, Kirk, obviously the original, but Pike, because of just just how they developed, just how Anson Mount. Let's just take this moment and talk about how great Anson Mount is portraying Pike here because he said in one of the interviews that we saw like he had this whole essentially blank canvas to really make Pike his, and he's really owning it, and I just appreciate it. I really do. Of course, in this they're dismissed. There's this little moment again between Pike and Lon, which brings me back to the first episode where that dynamic relationship was, and I appreciated this again. La'an wasn't over; she was sort of just right in this episode for me, and kind of just telling her, "Hey, listen, the crew can tell what's going on." And of course, we see another scene of this boy behind Pike, La'an. It's really bugging her, and you can really feel it. Now, when you look at this uniform, speak to this uniform really quickly, it reminded me, especially those shoulder panels there, reminded me of the Star Trek Beyond, that sort of jacket that they had. But it's just kind of the first thing that went in my mind. But there it is. Goes back, of course, to Hemmer and Uhura. He's trying to do what he has to do as an engineer. And in these scenes, we're getting a little bit more background on Hemmer, Uhura. It was more Hemmer in terms of his background being who he is. And of course, he can't really do what he needs to do. So he's going to actually have Uhura do what he needs to do. And Of course, Hammer's going to walk her through it, and I love it. I love this dynamic. I love how there's always like these odd pairings, but it works in these episodes. It really works. And Uhura, I'm really liking how she's getting into her role on the ship here. And Hammer, man, I Hammer is just a home run for me. I love Hammer, and not just because he's in the same city as me. No, he is actually a really good actor in my opinion, and the way he's portraying Hammer, absolutely love it. So yeah, walking her through it, and love how again he actually is really blind in real life, but just kind of talking about that. And of course, go back to the bridge here. Spock comes up with an idea, being creative. He says, "Captain, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna literally take a navigation system and turn it into some sort of compass." I think that's kind of what they said, and Pike loved it. Again, I love Ortega's little interaction with when she's there. She's always has this smile, and there was a tweet on the tweeters that she was talking about Stranger Worlds again, and that may be something that we sort of talk about on stream, maybe because I appreciated it so much. It made me feel a little more sort of attached to her, and how much she does actually truly enjoy and love her character here in Strange New Worlds. Like she's very thankful for the opportunity, and she really, when we were covering that interview part, she really wanted to do everything she could to get sort of the feel as being the pilot of the Enterprise, and I appreciated that. Of course, I took this because the essentially saying let's go deeper, and Spock's like I didn't say let's go deeper into the red dwarf, but that's the plan because of course they need to try to get away. And then I appreciated all this. They were just sort of here still in the red dwarf, and this was the Gorn ship coming towards them. I enjoy this. So when La'an got back to the bridge, she was actually reinstated as the acting number one because of course Una wasn't there. There was this dynamic, there was a scene here, and it just showed again Pike's trust in his crew. And Pike said, keep her steady. Ortegas was like, arming weapons or, evasive maneuvers, and like keep her steady. Gordon's ship's getting closer. Ortegas is getting a little, she's doing that little bounce in her chair. She's getting really anxious, and this is the moment where Pike looks at La'an to say, hey, keep her in check. And of course, La'an looks at her, hey, just stay still, hold her steady. And I enjoyed that. Kind of gives again that confidence for me. And I'm not gonna kind of blow over the fact that she was about to sort of disobey Pike's orders, but it was one of those trust moments for me, and that's how I'm just gonna sort of see it. But it was great in terms of just again another interaction dynamic. So they come up with the plan. What is that plan? Which they actually spoke in the briefing room. They out of all the systems, their tactical systems, their phasers are gone, their torpedoes are gone essentially, but one. They have only one torpedo left. So the plan is drop the torpedo on the ship. So that great plan, and I love the sequence because it reminded me of the fight between Kirk and Khan. Call it purposefully done, but sure, I'm for it. And the beautiful shot of the Enterprise going up and going over the target. Kind of took some shots of it there. Again, love the disco prize. Get a little bit of close where the torpedo tube's going. Kind of saw the little antenna there under the dome there. If I'm not mistaken, this is where the phasers kind of fire off. In the show, what's what they showed? Now, this could be them there, but these were the torpedo tubes. So yeah, they drop off a photon torpedo on top of the Gorn ship following them. Spock confirms that it does actually blow up. The ship, the ship shakes and everything like that. But now that was sort of on purpose, like kind of how Pike said, they sacrificed that one ship to give away their position. And of course, Ortegas mentions, how come now there's a big blip? Well, there's the two ships, two smaller ships, the same kind, and now this huge, massive Goran ship, which again, I don't get the shape of this. I really don't. I don't like it. Just period point blank. I don't like it, but that's the big bad ship right there. And again, here is the plan saying they're going to go deeper into the red dwarf. That's not what Spock said. I thought it was pretty funny. He's like, that's not what I said, but they do it anyways. Let's set a course. Of course, it goes back to the sick bay here, and yeah, Una's in bad shape, and they need to. There's like they got a lot, but one of the bigger fragments that got stuck in her, and they need to get it out, and they need to knock her out because it's really deep, and she's gonna lose a lot of blood. And again, this interaction with Mabanga, and it's just I'm like hanging off every line of every scene, and that's how engaged I'm loving it. It's there's a lot of story going on. There's like 4 or 5 plot stories going on, A, B, C, D, E, but they do it in such a way that the pacing feels natural because they're showing what's going on all at once, and I really do. It keeps me engaged at least. And got back here to the cargo bay, yeah, and indeed this cargo bay is opened, and Hammer did say to her, "Okay, listen, check out these rods, feel the warmth." She actually touched it. She's like, "I told you just to feel it," but essentially just telling her to feel which one was not hot. Take out, and this again, Uhura just kind of is excited and is happy about the teamwork that's happening here. I love it. And I'm loving this interaction between them, even though it is essentially a life and death situation. They got to get going. There's these lighthearted moments, and again, captains, we got to keep it. It's a show, okay? Now, the deeper that they're going in, of course, to the red dwarf, the more pressure there is on the hull, and this is where you have the structural failure there happening over all over the ship here. And again, I love to take these screenshots here because it's showing sort of the just what their stations are looking at. And I love it. You can see they're all almost like the decks there and the warp core, the warp nacelles, the bridge. So they did actually say lower decks, and then they said to clear the lower decks, they had to close the bulkheads so that they can sort of release some pressure, relieve pressure from the ship. So one of the earlier scenes, right, was this blue shirt was coming down the hallway, kind of said hi to Kyle. This was this kind of really hurt. This sucked because this day was to remember the crew that you served that you lost. And well, the blue shirt here, this officer here was too hurt. They were trying to get it. Kyle actually was running down the hallway and saw the officer there, picked him up, but then of course the doors were closing and he pushed him out. Like he pushed him out of the way. This was heartbreaking. Now I'm wondering if they're gonna give a little bit moment here to Kyle because this is what he sees. And you gotta imagine, Captain, like this is gonna traumatize someone. Just like how La'an is traumatized. And I'm wondering if they're gonna give Kyle a little bit of moment here, but that was his moment. If this is gonna sort of pop up in the next sort of seasons, but pretty horrifying to happen on the day that you're remembering already passed because you can tell he's wearing a pin remembering some that he's lost on his previous ship. So there you go. But then, of course, it kind of speaks to what Pike was saying, the dangers of being out here, right? All alone, just the ship, whole point there. And again, you see his acting is just on point. You can feel his heart breaking. You can feel his heart breaking. He had to make that decision because La'an did say we lost one crewman, and it just hurts him. And I really felt that. And he was about to actually say, well, he actually did give the order battle stations because he was ready and prepared to have the Gorn come onto the ship. And lo and behold, well, the ship actually explodes. That's chasing him. Now, I do appreciate what Pike said and the confidence that she had in the Enterprise. Again, I love how they're making the Enterprise a character in this because as they're going in, of course, deeper to the Red Dwarf, all the pressure, he's like, she'll hold. He said that, and well, she did hold. This ship being smaller, it made sense that it actually didn't make it to them. And, and he just makes these little faces here and there. Of course, they're about to give Una the plasma, and of course, now this nurse says this, which actually looks like the actual communications officer, if I'm not mistaken, there who needs plasma. So Una actually orders Mabanga Chapel to give it to her, even though she's going to lose a lot of blood. But she ordered him, so she took a last sort of breath. I believe this was anesthesia or whatever it was, but that was the last one. So that was the last one. So here we're back to the bridge here. They're trying to hatch up a plan here of what to do. Essentially, La'an and comes up with a plan to take a shittle. Yes, shittle. Yes. Love the shittle. It didn't really show it much, but it's still, and it comes to one of my favorite parts of this episode. So Spock and La'an take a shittle, and I, I didn't really like how this was being portrayed, but it for the plot, sure it works. This is essentially we're showing how the Gorn were communicating, which was flashes of light. Essentially, is Morse code, and which is weird. They're just shining lights onto the ship. This was just back and forth. Here you see again that the big old Gorn baddie ship and the small little itty bitty one. It's just a weird way of communicating. Again, the site here inside of the shuttle Galileo, and this scene was pretty cool next because literally on telling Spock, hey, listen, I need to find out what's going on. Do a mind meld. Of course, there's another there of the SSP just now. She's being reminded, but she really wants to unlock it. So Spock does a mind meld with her, and this is where again I connected a lot more with La'an because it was just really it gave us more of an insight to why she's this lone wolf. And this is years ago, and we find out that this is literally their breeding grounds. That this is what her memory is. That she needed Spock's help with the mind meld to unlock it. And there you go. That this is La'an's brother. This is La'an's brother again. The uniform there just looks like that jacket. But this moment was really good between this her older brother and then the younger La'an. They're trying to escape from the Gorn, and of course the brother. And I appreciated this scene where it switched from younger La'an to older La'an. She was, man, you can tell by the way she was talking, where she's her brother, like she was scared, and there were some tears. But her brother gave her his book and essentially figured out how they communicate, which is essentially like Morse code. So something about like hunt week, and kept a diary of what he figured out. But essentially, he said, "Hey, listen, run," and this is how she loses her brother because, well, she escapes and of course her brother takes the hit. So then it shows the communication between these two ships there. I believe this is a different ship here on the left than it is on the right. The right is probably the one we were seeing. But and then this scene comes up. So La'an goes back to Spock, talking about the loss, of course, of her brother. And then Burnham comes up again in the scene. And Spock wanted to end the mind meld. And he was getting a little emotional. If anything, this scene made me go, okay, good one, Spock. I love the way he was talking about it. You can tell in his voice that he did actually want it to stop. And it brings up Burnham again. It's the second reference, I believe, in so far in this series. So he was crying. You can tell there were some tears there. There were some tears there. So they end essentially the mind meld. La'an gives sort of a communication saying that there's some humans that have come onto the ship. The big ship just blasts the little ship just like that, and that at least eliminates that. And see, look how small this ship is. But that's what happened. Literally, use the phaser system essentially to send that message, which was weird, but whatever. It was Morse code, essentially what it was. So again, now they're back here to Uhura and Hemmer. Loving this. Again, can't say anything but good stuff. I love all the stuff that was happening, and of course, it kind of speaks to more of why Hemmer, because it kind of the Enar are more like pacifist, and it says something about, well, I will defend the ideals of the Federation. So I really am loving Hemmer a lot more as time goes on. In the little scenes that he's had, it's just sort of made me connect with him a lot more because of the weight that he has in each scene that he's with here with the crew, and again, of course, loving this interaction between the two. Almost can tell he's kind of smiling there to her. Of course, Hammer gives the update. There's like about 20 minutes left or something, and try to at his best guess of of when the systems are going to fail. Pike then comes up with a plan, something about an after sort of. I didn't really write it down, but the plan is essentially go deeper and create some sort of after image, release the cargo that they have there. It's going to explode to make it look like the ship explode. That's essentially the plan that they're going to go with. And when he's giving these orders again, it just gives a sense of I no, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to yes, yes. Of course, of course, the little moments here and there, but essentially they tell them to suit up in the cargo bay because they are going to drop that cargo off to create an explosion. And man, this was tense. This moment was tense, and this is one of the trailers where they say where Hemmer says, one of his purpose is to fix what is broken. He asks Uhura what's her purpose. She's like, I don't know. Does that mean I don't die? Because the Eater believe that build your purpose, you die. And again, kind of just playing off a more of Uhura's just trying to find herself, not only her sort of herself, but also her place in Starfleet. But of course, we know where this is going, but it's really good to kind of get that background, and I enjoy it. I really do love it. I want to know where that connection is going to be to when Uhura is the Uhura we know from the TOS/the TMP. Getting on these suits are already here. Essentially, they're going to hook it up there to the thing. Now, this is again one from the trailer. Ortega says if we pull this off, it's going to be the Pike maneuver. Nostalgia nugget. Thank you very much. I'm done. I'm for it. Just showing again, he does his speech. I, I get the feels. I don't know. I just get the feels, and I'm hanging off everything. Like I said before, captains, and I'm like at on the edge of my seat, and I enjoy it. So they're hooking themselves up here. Essentially, of course, he gives his little hit it there, and here the Enterprise goes again. I appreciate these shots that they're doing, and it just shows again the scale. Of course, they're being pursued then aboard the Gorn ship right there. You go into this beautiful shot here. So the Enterprise actually goes into these rings, and that's the black hole because the red dwarf actually is going into the black hole. And that's what I was speaking to earlier in the actual intro. They show a black hole. Well, they were showing, well, not showing this particular black hole, but I kind of like that connection that they made from the intro to this episode. And of course, they say, there we go, let's hit it. They drop the cargo. Now, yeah, this is underneath the shuttle bay, it looks like, but it looks like it's opened the whole time. But they dropped that container that they were supposed to drop off to the colony or whatever they had there in the cargo bay. They drop it off. Of course, they're being sucked out and they're being only held by this. And of course, right? This is not going to hold. And you have this moment where Hemmer and Uhura kind of hold hands and they go deeper into closer to the black hole, ride the wave, and boom, there's that explosion. Apparently, there's like this sort of delay, the plan that they had. And here we get a good shot of this Gorn ship, and I don't understand the actual shape of this. Sure. And of course, the Gorn see that. They're still record the pressure, so they're thinking, yeah, it's done, it's over. And it's enough for them to give them enough time to escape because the Gorn already flew off. It was a beautiful scene. It was a beautiful scene of the Enterprise just kind of zooming out. You see the explosion kind of almost follow the lines here, and it was a really great scene. Again, I love how there's these ship scenes. I love these ship scenes. I love it. Yes. Of course, you kind of see how beat up the Enterprise is here, and there's another shot there later on, but there's this sense of relief. Now, this is where, oof, mm, this is where, again, I get engaged because the first thing that he does is try to contact Hemmer and Uhura. There was, man, he made this scene. He made this scene. There was no answer at all for however many seconds, and he said, "La'an, get recovery teams," and he was just so worried. You can really tell. And then Uhura, I'm telling you right now, Caps, I just like, I actually went yes because of the actual relief. It just felt genuine. Again, I cannot. I've never been involved this engaged in a series before that just makes me feel what the intention of every scene is supposed to make the viewer feel. And Pike is doing such a great Anson is doing such a great job in portraying that. And of course, this is who I put him on the thumbnail cast, and this was me. This was literally now again, we know Uhura is gonna make it, but for some reason I was still like, oh, I was still sort of what's gonna happen. And this is how I feel. This is how I don't know. This is how I felt. I was really just overjoyed and happy and relieved, and everyone else was too. There was a shot of Ortega's there happy, and of course Pike goes to La'an. La'an's still worried, and this is where she says, "No, they've extended their hunting grounds," but Pike says, "No, we'll be ready." And again, he's going around, assuring, going to his crew. I loved how again this was a Pike and La'an centric episode, and it gave us a little bit more of La'an's background, which again I totally appreciated. This episode was indeed something that was really good, and Silver was not messing around. He said, "Can't wait for us to see this because it was really good." We get a shot of the Enterprise of how beat up it got, and I love how Pike said she'll hold, and she did, and it's almost like that trust the captain had in his ship, mind you, in her, the Enterprise. Mind you, of course, as the captain, he just has to make these decisions, and this whole hard decision making he did in this episode, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it, enjoyed every moment of this ship, and again, another shot of the Enterprise, just how beat up she got doing that. So yeah, I believe that cargo bay is right there, right below the main shuttle bay, and it looks like it's always open. Now, I don't think I've ever seen, for some reason, the new Trek, and I don't mean that in an insulting way. People, you say new Trek, and it's no, I don't. He's a new Trek here now in our time now, as of this video. I don't know why they like open shut bay doors. I really don't, but it's there. Again, just another respect shot for the Enterprise. It's like she's that character that takes care of the crew, and I love it. Out here, they not only have trust in each other, but also in the Enterprise, which is again, you kind of see that theme throughout all the series, saying the ship is in itself, and seeing back to Una, and she needed plasma. This was actually attached to Mabenga, giving her the plasma she needed, and again, I cannot help but just smile. I'm just smiling throughout these when the episode goes from starting what's happening to the climax and then closing off all the story points here. I just can't help but smile. And that's why I've been doing these reviews, is because I can't help but not just get that love that I'm feeling out there to my fellow captains, because I'm loving this series. I really am. If you can't tell, captains, I really do. Of course, Laan does her personal log again. She's actually now wearing the pin of the SS Puget Sound, and man, like I said, I really connected with her on this in this episode. She did such a great job I think, and it was just right. Of course, saying that they lost 7 crewmen, and for Pike to be here, to kind of just sort of, I felt it, I felt the feel, felt the loss, and it was such a great sort of human feeling to feel that though this is a show, again, it got me so engaged that I'm feeling the loss, the sense of loss. They lost 7 crew. I believe it's like 2 colonists. I think is what they lost. The girls, I think they lost a girl there earlier that Lon was talking to. But this is the cargo bay. Again, this is in that cargo bay. It's open. I took this shot because we got an open cargo bay, but with the whole remembrance, this happening on the Remembrance Day. So now they're gonna have another pin, right? I don't remember this being a thing, but it's a thing now. Whatever. I'm for it. I really did love this episode, and of course, Lan's doing her story, her or not her story, sorry, her personal log actually goes down to see like there's this moment again between the two, and La'an has had her ups and downs with me, but I do love how she was portrayed in this particular episode, and it was really good the dynamic between not just La'an and Pike, but Uhura, Hemmer, right? And let's close this off, captains. Spock, La'an, right? Ortegas, Pike, Una, La'an, Una, Chapel, Mbenga. You just had all these happening, and it just kept me so engaged, and just a smile, a joy to watch this. I felt happy, I felt sad, I felt surprised, I felt all the feels in this episode. And Silver, again, I'm gonna just say a huge, huge shout out to Silver Metal Tavern, who is the photo editor for Strange New Worlds, who was really involved in this, and he was not kidding. This was probably one of the best episodes so far. So we're 4 episodes in, captains. 4 episodes in, and it just feels like all of them were good. Now, if I had to rank these, I'd have to go episode from top to bottom, and bottom not being like a bad episode at all. I'd say episode 1, episode 4, and then 3, and then 2. Not again, nothing to say about that or her episode. It was I enjoyed that episode because it also had Sam Kirk in it. But man, so far, captains, I'm just you see this shot right here that I have on screen, and everyone was featured, even the Enterprise. So I know these reviews have been long, but I cannot help but just appreciate what I'm watching because it's just really great to have a Star Trek series again that I can be excited about, that I love, that I'm invested in, that each character is really being explored and featured, and just the dynamics between all of them is just so natural and just so real. And I can't wait to see the whole season how this plays out. Man, I'm excited to see what's gonna happen at the final season episode. But I believe there's only 10 episodes, so what we may do at the very end there is do a special stream where we kind of go overall and talk about this, even this one, captains. And I know this is an hour over, but I cannot not help but share this feeling with you, caps. I know I'm more covering the Star Trek Online stuff, but this has given me a chance to cover Strange New Worlds because in Star Trek Online we do have the Enterprise in there. And of course, I've always said the reason why I want to cover this is I'm hoping that we see everything that we see on screen come into Star Trek Online, from the costumes, whatever ships we see, the shuttle. I want the shuttle to be there. But all I can say for this episode is yes, I love it. I enjoyed it. It's ranked really second there, and it's funny how the first and second are La'an and Pike, even though episode 2 kind of made it to that place, and because of La'an and how she was too overly in your face. But regardless, it was a great episode. And captains, I hope you enjoyed this as well when it comes to just enjoying for Strange New Worlds for what it is. I just hope that that's it. We just enjoy it for what it is, because I know there'll be people that don't like it, and that's fine. You don't have to like every Trek that comes out. I don't like Star Trek Discovery, but I respect it because it gave us this. It gave us Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I can't wait to cover more of this, captains. We will do our best to cover it, but we're also covering the Star Trek Online. So, captains, comment below. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Where do you rank this? Again, my ranking is 1, 4, 3, 2. Tell me how you've ranked these episodes so far. Like the video, subscribe here to the YouTube Bridge, and until the next video, caps.
Live long and prosper.